Whatsoever you do to the least of my people, that you do unto me.
It was just an unused space, and it wasn't a good space. Our storage for all of the excess food was in the furnace room. And that only happened after a while when the man who was the maintenance man retired, and we said, if we clean out the furnace room, can we have it for storage? And Father said, yes, of course. So Phil Brady and I spent a couple of days just cleaning all the stuff out of there.
So I came here when we first heard about the building, when we were all voting on the building back in 2011. That's what I thought, I might do that. So then when we opened in June of 2012, I was here the first day.
It is very rewarding. Again, it's knowing that you're helping people. A lot of people come through and that you do see the need. Sometimes it's more acute than others.
As we help those in need, we're working together and we're really helping each other. And then we realize we're all just one of the same family.
When I was hungry, you gave me to eat. When I was thirsty, you gave me to drink.
The United States is often described as the wealthiest country in the world, and yet the Census Bureau estimates that almost 38 million Americans live in poverty, roughly 12% of our population. Almost 38 million people have incomes below the federally defined poverty line, and they are unable to meet their basic needs. In 2024, a family of 4 with an income less than $31,200 lived below the poverty line. Approximately 16% of people under the age of 18 live in poverty. That's about 12 million children. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, individuals experience food insecurity when they have limited or uncertain access to enough food because they lack economic resources. Locally, the Indie Hunger Network has estimated that as much as 31% of Marion County's population lives with food insecurity. That works out to as many as 300,000 people in our community. Poverty and food insecurity in a world of great wealth is not new. A central tenet of the 3 Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is that the poor should be treated with dignity, and that those who can should assist the poor and the hungry. In the spirit of the Gospels, Boulevard Place Food Pantry, a collaborative work led by lay Catholics on the north side of Indianapolis, supports people living with food insecurity. Boulevard Place is a special work of the Indianapolis Archdiocesan Council of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul, a lay Catholic organization dedicated to serving the poor. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul dates from 1833, when Frederick Ozanam and 5 other university students established a conference of charity to help people in Paris. The society is named for St. Vincent, a 17th century priest who co-founded the Daughters of Charity. One of their advisors was Sister Rosalie Rendu, a member of the Daughters of Charity. Today, the society has branches in more than 150 countries. And almost 200 years after it was founded, the society's mission is essentially the same. A network of friends inspired by gospel values, growing in holiness, and building a more just world through personal relationships with and service to people in need. The mission of St. Vincent de Paul is both practical and spiritual. In the United States, the Society is headquartered in St. Louis, Missouri, and it is comprised of more than 150 councils. The Indianapolis Archdiocesan Council serves central and southern Indiana. an area that extends from Indianapolis to the Ohio River and from Richmond to Terre Haute. The council manages one of the largest food pantries in the state, the Pratt Quigley Pantry, located on 30th Street in Indianapolis. Paul Ainsley of Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish was for many years a volunteer at Boulevard Place. He is now the president of the Indianapolis Council.
So the council has two aspects. One is special works, and special works includes the food pantries we have, both the one on 30th Street and the one we have at Boulevard Place, the two Mission 27 stores we have in the city, the distribution center that we have that is down on Marion Street that provides clothing and furniture and household goods and appliances, as well as special works in places like Bedford and New Albany, Brazil, and Richmond, other parts of the area we cover. So that's one aspect, is the works we do. The other aspects of what we have is really the conferences and the volunteers and the people engaged in doing good work, where the primary thing we do is home visits. Home visits being the number one interaction we have. That's the basis of all we do, that person-to-person interaction we get on a home visit. And that's done at the conference level.
St. Vincent de Paul is a bottom-up organization. At its lowest level are more than 4,000 conferences, which are often based in Catholic parishes.
The most important thing the council does is support the conferences. They're our front line of interaction with the people in need. They're doing the home visits, they're getting the phone calls, they're doing really the work on the ground that's necessary to figure out what people need.
As described in the Society's rule, Vincentian spirituality is inclusive and non-judgmental.
It doesn't matter much where they come from or how they look or what their appearances or languages are or whatever. We're really here to help. And as we help people, we see that they appreciate it, that they appreciate not only helping them, but also recognizing that they are humans, that they are children of God. You know, whether they've got a new iPhone or whether they've got a nice car, they're here for a reason, and we are not here to judge them.
Phil and Millie Brady of St. Thomas Aquinas Parish have been active in the Society for decades. They were interviewed in the original site of what became Boulevard Place Pantry. Phil described the origins of the Indianapolis Council's distribution center, which today collects donations of furniture, housewares, and clothing, and then distributes them through Mission 27 thrift stores.
People would say, "Oh, I got some furniture, do you want it?" And we'd say, "Yeah," and we'd take it, and we had to have a place to store it. So on the same day, we would pick up stuff, and on our way over, Judy Henderson, she used to be a secretary here, and her husband, Dick, they both organized it such that they had a list of people who needed stuff. And so that's what happened on occasion. We'd pick up stuff, and then we'd make our deliveries. And that one day, we ended up with nothing left in the truck. It was, that's the way it should be.
And then what happens is the women are behind and they have to take care of all that.
Well, that's something else. St. Vincent de Paul Society used to be a men only. And now women are a very big part of it now. And they do a wonderful job.
Phyllis McNamara of Christ the King Parish is another long-term member of the Society.
Well, I've been with St. Vincent de Paul since probably the 70s, 1970s. And so I was on the council around the board at Christ the King from the very beginning, from there. When Mr. Quigley, Bill Quigley, when he left, then we sort of took over. And that's the Pratt Quigley. And so then we came, and so they asked me to come as a spiritual director. So I said, sure, I can do that. And it just kind of, I just never left. I just never left.
Boulevard Place Food Pantry is a collaborative effort organized by members of 5 parishes on the north side of Indianapolis: Christ the King, Immaculate Heart of Mary, St. Joan of Arc, St. Luke the Evangelist, and St. Thomas Aquinas. Mark Varno, who became involved in 1990, described the early years of the pantry.
There was a need in the community, and not necessarily in the immediate community, but certainly in the greater area around St. Thomas.
The boundaries of St. Thomas Aquinas extend approximately 3 miles south from where the White River crosses Meridian Street to 34th Street. The boundaries include multi-million-dollar homes on North Meridian Street, like the Governor's Mansion, and very modest homes to the east of Crown Hill Cemetery. The parish, like much of Indianapolis, contains pockets of wealth and pockets of poverty. The 1980 census reported that 11% of the people in Marion County lived in poverty. That year, only 3% of the people who lived in the census tract, that includes St. Thomas Aquinas Church and School, and the Governor's Mansion, lived in poverty. And yet, within walking distance, just to the east of Crown Hill Cemetery, 30% of the people lived in poverty.
The pantry began in 1982, and Robert Kinney was the original manager of it through St. Vincent de Paul. Bob was just such a gentle soul, and he just handled it with a great deal of aplomb, no bother, no mess, that kind of thing.
As described by Phil Brady, the pantry was located down a steep flight of stairs.
Well, people would enter, they'd come down the outside steps, enter this door right here, and then you'd have a desk between this column and the wall, and they would report in, and Bernie Paradise or whoever was behind the desk would record and see if they were eligible for food and stuff.
Bob Kenny led the pantry until January of 1990. When he decided to step down, a call for a new director was answered by Mark Varno.
St. Vincent de Paul just put a notice in the bulletin that said, we're looking for a pantry manager if anybody wants to do that. And I had just retired. So I thought, well, I've been wanting to do something with St. Vincent de Paul, so here we go. We were really only seeing about 2 or 3 people a week. And it was generally pretty much the same people, and that was okay. We wanted to take care of whoever needed it. The word began to spread, and the need became greater because more people were then coming in. Within, I would say, 2 years, Bill Quigley from Christ the King came over, and he said that they felt the need to start a food pantry. And he said, but rather than 2 of us doing this, why don't we join together? You've got the space, we can help you. And so Christ the King would like to join with St. Thomas in doing this food pantry if you will accept people from our area.
The Christ the King parish boundaries cover a wide geographic area, extending south from 65th Street to 34th Street and east from the Monon Trail to just past Keystone. Like St. Thomas Aquinas, the parish includes pockets of wealth and pockets of poverty. In 1990, 17% of the people just north of the state fairgrounds lived in poverty.
You know, people that love the poor, all they want to do is help. You know, we had, with Christ the King, we weren't even registered with St. Vincent de Paul. We didn't know we weren't. Mr. Quigley, he never did it. We just wanted to feed the poor. We wanted to feed the hungry.
In the mid-1990s, St. Joan of Arc became the third parish involved with the pantry. This parish also covers a diverse area, extending south and west from 46th and Meridian to 32nd Street and Fall Creek Parkway. Large, beautiful homes sit across from the church, along Watson Road and along the parkway. These homes may be contrasted with an impoverished area near 32nd and Broadway. In 1990, 12% of Marion County's population lived in poverty. But in the area around 32nd and Broadway, it was 37%. At this time, Bill and Dolores Yaden and their family, with the support of other St. Joan of Arc parishioners, ran a pantry from their home. Their gift to the community is now embedded in Boulevard Place Food Pantry. 2 of their children were interviewed at the Pratt Quigley Pantry. Sister Kathleen Yaden works for St. Vincent de Paul. Jennifer Winters, her sister, is a volunteer.
I can remember being in grade school.
But we started getting involved with food, you know, with Thanksgiving, the Thanksgiving meals and the Christmas meals. So we were involved with St. Mary's also with Father Rodas. And so he would bring us stuff, and then, but we always did just those particular seasons. And then it grew into a 52-week food pantry.
We had a basement storage room. Huge storage room, shelves and shelves of food, boxes of chips. That part was in the basement, and then out in the garage we had a restaurant-size refrigerator with, you know, all the cold stuff, and then probably two or three deep freezers out there.
I think they called the helpline, then we got the phone call, and then we delivered. I was going through my thoughts yesterday after we talked, and only people who we knew did they actually show up. And I was trying to remember that man who would come on a regular basis after Mass. I mean,
he would do multiple deliveries too. I do remember he would have certain days that he would be like, "Come on, let's go deliver. Let's make these boxes and get." So most, maybe 3 days a week, we would do multiple deliveries to people in need. So
I think we hinted at it, but it definitely impacted us to understand the needs of other people, and that when we came together, things could happen.
Bill Yaden and Dolores Yaden ran a food pantry for Joan of Arc out of their back porch. When Bill died, it became a real burden for Dolores, and so we suggested that St. Joan of Arc just send us whatever food they collect, and if they had any volunteers, they could help out, and we would accept their clients. Well, that left Immaculate Heart kind of in that netherland, and they didn't have much need, but they did have resources and they had people. And so it grew into a 4-parish collaboration that took care of kind of the whole area. Bill Quigley was very instrumental in getting supplies and resources and that kind of thing. He wrote a government grant to get some racks for us for that small pantry we had in the basement of St. Thomas, and did some other things. And people from Immaculate Heart began to get more involved. They would bring us food, and then finally we said, well, I wonder if St. Luke's, maybe they don't have as much need, but we can help cover that if they want to join in. So, and that kind of came about when Harry Troush just dropped in one day from St. Luke's and said, I hear you need help down here. And he started volunteering, and he was a great guy. So then he got St. Luke's kind of more interested, and we actually then just asked them to join us in the whole endeavor. It didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen with any great plan in mind. It just kind of seemed like the thing to do at the time. Each parish in its own way has been just so helpful, and have helped us make things happen. And it's good for us, and it's good for the community, and it's good for the people in need.
Over 2 decades, the pantry grew into a 5-parish effort to combat food insecurity for people living in an area that extended from 96th Street to 32nd Street and from the White River to just east of Keystone Avenue. Within that area, some neighborhoods had many resources while others were impoverished. As an example, the census for the year 2000 reports that the median annual household income in Marion County was just over $40,000. In the neighborhood around Immaculate Heart of Mary Church and School, the median household income was more than $71,000. In contrast, the median household income to the north of the fairgrounds was just under $30,000 per year. That same year, in the neighborhood around St. Luke the Evangelist Church and School, the median household income was $98,000. Compare that to the area just east of Crown Hill, where the median household income was less than $22,000 per year. The parishes are diverse. What the lay Catholics from the 5 parishes who are involved with the pantry share is a desire to serve those in need. As the pantry grew, it became more complex. Food donations from the 5 parishes were not enough to meet the demand. Around 2002, the pantry began purchasing food from Gleaner's Food Bank. In 2005, a self-select model was adopted, and visitors began shopping for food based on a point system.
I ended up, for instance, going out to Gleaner's about every couple of weeks, and they knew we were coming, and so there were certain things set aside for us, and they had a forklift and all kind of a fancy equipment, and we'd put it right in the truck, and then we'd take it back here, and we'd have the same struggle with the needing help to unload. And having all the kids was just wonderful.
St. Thomas school kids, back when we were at the old place, they were incredibly helpful. Rose Hockey and the principal were always very simple. I would just have to call Rose and say, Rose, it's Mark, and I need 5 kids. And I would have 5, 6th, 7th, or 8th graders over there in just a little bit. Sometimes she would send the whole class if we were unloading a big truck, because Phil Brady would move it to the back of the truck and the kids would chain it up the sidewalk and down the stairs.
Through the first decade of the 21st century, demand for the pantry continued to grow. In 2008, the pantry served almost 2,600 families. In 2010, the pantry served almost 4,000 families. A careful analysis with help from the Polis Center and John Beekler, a pantry volunteer who worked at the center, showed that while the pantry served shoppers from throughout the city, most of them lived within the boundaries of Christ the King, St. Joan of Arc, and St. Thomas Aquinas. The good news was that the sources of food had grown to include donations from other organizations, including nearby Fairview Presbyterian Church. The bad news was that after almost 30 years in the basement of St. Thomas Aquinas, it was time to move.
That was a small space. We had room for 2 people to shop at once, a couple freezers, a couple refrigerators, and about 15 steps up and down to get in there, and not always the safest environment for shoppers or for volunteers for that matter. Taking food into the downstairs pantry at one time, I slipped on the ice and dumped 3 bottles of spaghetti sauce on the steps in the middle of January.
We stored food at Orchard Park Church at 106 in Westfield. We stored food in the basement of Father's basement, or the rectory. We stored foods at New Wineskins out on 38th Street because they had a big walk-in freezer that we could use. We stored food in people's basements My mind was so full of little locations of where is, oh yes, the food, that something is up here and I need to go get that today because we're almost out the pantry. And it was a nightmare. It worked, but it was a nightmare. The entry for us to bring in food had to be brought in from Kenwood, up the sidewalk, or else back my pickup truck up over the grass, which some of the pastors were not too happy about. But they let me do it. And we didn't have enough storage room. We didn't have enough waiting space for the clients. It was an unsafe situation for the clients to get stuff down there. John Yearling saw this space and called me, and we came down and looked in the windows, and we kind of went around, and he finally got a hold of the owner who let us come in and take a look around, and we thought maybe we could remodel it if we could raise some money.
A case statement was developed and a capital campaign began with appeals to members of the 5 parishes. And then a major donor was found.
So we started the process of me going to masses at Joan of Arc and Immaculate Heart. We talked at St. Thomas during the masses, or after the mass, and then Christ the King people gave what they could without the church talks, and as did St. Luke's. What happened for the big money was Susan Williams introduced me to Ryan Brady from Central Indiana Community Foundation. And he and I met at a coffee shop, and I told him what we were looking for, and he said, I may have somebody that might be interested in helping you with the funding. He introduced me to a man and a company who at that time did not want to be named. I took John Yearling with me because he had drawn up plans, and it was expertly done. He was an engineer and a good planner, and he had all these blueprints already, electrical, plumbing, construction, remodel, everything. It was all laid out. And so we walked into this guy's office, and we handed him this roll of papers, and he looked through it and he said, you guys kind of know what you're doing. He said, I'm pretty impressed with this. So he said, we do a lot of construction here, and this looks pretty good. That plus the money that we had raised through the churches was enough that we knew that we could do what we needed to do here and not worry about it.
The new facility, with more room for shoppers, a parking lot, and more storage space, formally opened on August 12, 2012. Complementing the new facility, the pantry's leadership was more formally organized. Connie Gigax of St. Joan of Arc and a board member of Second Helpings became the first president of the board of directors of the newly christened Boulevard Place Food Pantry. The new logo was designed by Sally Fay. Not long after the new pantry opened, there were more changes. After 26 years as director, Mark Varno decided that he would remain involved, but it was time to let someone else lead. Cindy Brown of St. Thomas Aquinas became director in 2015. Phyllis McNamara of Christ the King became president of the board of directors.
At the time, I had kind of migrated from just being a weekly shift volunteer to being the volunteer coordinator. So I was involved in setting the volunteer schedule, which involved an awful lot of communication with people that needed to get onto the schedule. So there's a lot of back and forth with that. Plus, at the time, I was coming in more often for shift work. So I was pretty commonly, I was at the pantry for a fair amount of time and kept running into Mark, and Mark just sort of put 2 and 2 together and said that I would likely be the one that would make the commitment.
Well, it was when Cindy came on board, and Connie, she had already been gone for several months, maybe 6 months. So Cindy just sort of filled in, and then she said, well, we need a president. And everybody looked around and go, I can't do that, I can't do that. I guess, well, I'll do it. And so that's how I just volunteered, and I've never left there either. I'm not a quitter.
Under the new leadership, the number of people served by the pantry continued to grow. Much sooner than expected, there was a need for a second renovation. Late in 2019, steps were taken to start another capital campaign.
So the second renovation of the pantry happened after we took a good look at our waiting area at the time, which was actually a lack of waiting area. It was extremely small and cramped. And the only opportunity to expand within the existing footprint of the building was to lose a storage room, to expand the waiting room. And to lose a storage room was just unacceptable. We had nowhere to put the food. So it led to the thought, all right, if we're going to expand the waiting room, we need a warehouse. And it kind of went from there.
Then about when we started getting more serious, I contacted Central Indiana Community Foundation again and got Ron Defer to come out. About 3 months later, Bill Witchker, I can now say his name, called me and he said, Mark, I hear you are going to expand. And I said, yes, I would like to. And he said, well, I'd like to bring my son and my 2 nephews and my one nephew's wife out and just see the place and see what you've been doing and see what you're going to do. So we walked outside and I walked off a little area and I said, we need to expand to here and square off the front of the building and make it a bigger waiting room and so forth. And he said, how much money do you think you're going to need? And I said, well, based on what we have in hand, and I've already done some fundraising with the parishes again. And he looked at his family and they all grinned. And one of them said, Mark, you're not thinking big enough. Well, I didn't cry then, but I cried later.
With Steve Shank serving as project manager, the first step was to tear the original shell off of the building, and then COVID intervened. The pantry was closed for 1 month in order to protect shoppers and volunteers. When it reopened on April 22, 2020, the pantry shifted from in-store shopping to a drive-up service. In the meantime, the renovation continued.
Well, being the director during the pandemic was definitely a challenge because in March of 2020, when the whole country was shutting down, we were trying to figure out how do we operate our food pantry in such a small setting but maintain social distance, yet at the same time take care of people's needs with food. It was definitely a challenge, and we reopened, actually it was April 22nd of 2020, and we were up and running to serve outdoors. We figured out how we could safely navigate to pack bags of food, keep the volunteers safe, keep the clients safe, and make it work. So it was a team effort for sure.
Okay. All right. 1, 2, 3. All right.
With the help of master gardeners like Mary Durkin, flower boxes were added, and a native habitat was created. And, inspired by the appeal of Pope Francis to care for our Mother Earth, as the renovation neared completion, solar panels were added. In 2023, the panels saved almost $4,000 in electricity expenses. These savings were spent in support of the pantry. On August 5th, 2021, Phyllis McNamara welcomed our first shopper to the new facility. A renovation celebration was held Friday, August 6, 2021.
Boulevard Place!
So a year ago, we all gathered here to launch the renovation. Fast forward to now, and we're standing in our completed project. It is really hard to believe. Yay! A very special thank you to the Witchker family, which is here, Jean and William. A special thank you to Marion Inc. and in particular the crew. And the crew is scattered, I'm sure they're in the back, out there in the lot. The crew is just phenomenal. So big thank you to the crew. Steve Shank, wherever Steve is, he's hiding probably out there in the back as well. There he is right there, our construction project manager. Big thank you to Steve.
I want to also introduce to you my neighboring good friend who was president of Crownville Neighborhood Association, Denise Hackett. Well, with that being said, is this facility beautiful?
Yes.
Not only is it beautiful, but it enhances green. When I say green, I'm not talking about money, but money does help, so remember that. So, from the organ windows to the solar panels to the roof to the insulated garage door. I've been around this neighborhood a long time. I don't know, probably 60 years. But this was an old filling station. And look at it today.
So the city of Indianapolis is proud to join Boulevard Place staff, volunteers, and community partners in celebrating the completion of its remodeling and expansion. And so, as our city is fortunate to have resources like Boulevard Place, and the fact that the community comes together as one to support it, I, Indy Mayor Joe, thereby proudly proclaim August 6, 2021 as Boulevard Place Food Pantry Day in the city of Indianapolis.
1, 2, 3. Boulevard.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, so mine didn't even cut. Fingers not.
The expanded pantry offers a better environment for shoppers and volunteers. Self-select shopping is available on Thursdays and Saturdays. On Wednesdays, the pantry has continued the drive-up option, and visitors receive pre-packaged bags and boxes of food. Because some of the food distributed is from the United States Department of Agriculture, the guidelines of the Emergency Food Assistance Program of the federal government, TFAP, are followed.
That we have accomplished our goal to come here. We still advertise as being emergency food, but we're not. This is where they come every week. And when we started out, we were once a month. And then we went to twice a month. And then after COVID, we went to once. Then we were always once a month, or once a week in the drive-up, and so we just remained once a week. People need to feed their families, and the money isn't going anywhere.
The new pantry has much more room for shoppers. It's much more welcoming. It's much warmer and friendlier with the paint and the way it's laid out. For volunteers such as myself, who are doing a lot of the computer check-in work, certainly a much more comfortable environment.
About 10 o'clock in the morning, we have cars lined up around the building, and we are all inside the crew prepared to roll the cart full of goodies out to those individuals who are driving through. And depending on who's up, we start by collecting information from the clients in the car. Basically just statistics, name, address, how many people are in the household, and the ages of those people, whether or not the individuals served in the military, if they're a veteran.
Some things have not changed, including student volunteers, especially the elementary school students from the 5 parishes.
The Immaculate Heart kids, every Tuesday, they come over in the morning and spend a couple of hours doing whatever it is that we need to help them, or whatever we need that they can help with. And I think it's good for them because they can see that there's a need and what the facility is doing.
Under the leadership of Cindy Brown and Phyllis McNamara, several organizational changes were made, including the development of bylaws that identify specific unpaid positions for volunteers. These positions include a volunteer coordinator, a communications coordinator, an energy coordinator, and a facilities coordinator. Because demand continued to increase, a decision was made to hire part-time operations managers. And after 7 years as director, Cindy Brown decided to follow in the footsteps of Mark Varno and step down as director, but remain a volunteer.
Change is good for a pantry, and it had been 7 years that I was running the operations and being the director. So a couple changes that we made were to bring in other people to help with the operations, which is, buying the food, picking up food, bringing the food in, processing it, storing it, running the warehouse, and then making the shelves ready for distribution.
In 2022, Matt Hayes, a volunteer whose leadership experience included serving as president of Brebeuf Jesuit High School, became the pantry's 4th director. Under his leadership, Boulevard Place Pantry continues to thrive.
Tuesdays are the days when everything comes in here and there's a crew of volunteers. So I was part of that crew. And then I was approached one time by Cindy Brown and said, we're looking for a director, would you be interested? Why did I take this job? I thought I could use my experience of leadership, having been involved for many years in different leadership capacities in a faith-based environment, that I could use my leadership experience in this role as the director. The best source is donated food that comes from parishioners in the 5 sponsoring parishes, as well as some other churches in the area. And then we also get donated food from St. Vincent de Paul, the main food warehouse on 30th Street. And then we also buy food from Gleaners. So Gleaners gets a lot of food at reduced prices, and we're able to buy it from them. As I recall, 60% of our food here is donated and 40% is purchased. And our goal here, as our volunteer staff will tell you, is to have people walk in here and feel like they're in a small neighborhood grocery store and not a food pantry.
Volunteers are from diverse backgrounds and offer their service for a variety of reasons. What they share is a faith-based commitment to helping others. Phil Brady's commitment has lasted for decades. In 1962, as a draftee serving in the Air Force, his life was changed by the Cuban Missile Crisis.
And then came along the Cuban crisis. And so I was called to active duty. It scared the daylights out of me. I'm really a conscientious objector. And so I talked to my commanding officer. We were only on duty for about a month. And he said, well, you were drafted. You had to do something. I said, yeah, I'd be willing to work in a hospital or something like that. And he said, well, if I would get you an honorable discharge now, what would you volunteer for? And I said, well, they got this new thing now. It's called the Peace Corps. And he says, why not? And so I got out of a 6-year commitment after putting in about 5, and I went in the Peace Corps for 2 years. So that was remarkable, and I learned a lot about life, and I wanted to do more like what I did in the Peace Corps and Vincent de Paul for the rest of my life.
The church that I attend, Mount Pleasant Missionary Baptist Church, the pastor did a whole series on being active in the community and to be involved somewhere. And so I chose this place because it's close, it's within walking distance, and so that's why I volunteered here. So I'm also a deacon at the church, and serving on that board, we try to help those people that need assistance, whether they're members or not. We try to make a difference.
Yes, this place has just been what a cliche, a labor of love. It's just been so fun to meet all the people from the different parishes and to get to work with them. I saw somebody at Mass this past Sunday that I hadn't seen for a while, and he used to be a regular volunteer. And I just gave him a big hug because it was so great to see Bill and
what I do on Thursdays, I just can't imagine not being here. I like being part of this. I like being part of something better than what we have, and making it better, making these people feel welcome, and and they always want to hug you, and it's just they're just a family, and we're just taking care of each other. We're supposed to take care of each other. We all got the same father, we just have different birth mothers, so we're supposed to be taking care of each other.
The spirituality is implicit, that we are here helping other people who need it, and there's something more than just having that happen between two people. Somehow God's in the middle of all that.
We are all children of God, and we all should recognize that person whose needs our help, that person who has trouble with their bills, that person who has trouble with their health care, whatever their needs are, we're here to help because that's what we do for our fellow brothers and sisters.
In many ways, the goal for Boulevard Place Food Pantry is a world where there is no food insecurity and no need for a food pantry. Unfortunately, that will not happen anytime soon. Demand for the pantry continues to increase. Over the life of the pantry, the resources of some people in some neighborhoods have also increased. In other areas, however, resources have decreased, while poverty and food insecurity have increased. For example, by 2022, and adjusted for inflation, the median annual income in the neighborhood around St. Luke had risen from $150,000 to almost $179,000 per year. In contrast, the adjusted for inflation income for the area near Crown Hill Cemetery had fallen from $34,000 to less than $28,000 per year. And while the percentage of people living in poverty in the area around St. Luke remained very low at 2%, the percentage of people living in poverty to the east of Crown Hill increased from 30 to 50%. In a world of haves and have-nots, the haves have more, and the have-nots have less. In 2023, the pantry gave 630,000 pounds of food to more than 16,000 neighbors. The location has changed, and its impact has grown, but the mission remains the same.
Starting the first of the year, we went back. We decided when COVID came, we started feeding the whole city, and so now we cannot do that anymore. And so the numbers were we just physically. I'm going to lose volunteers. People were just stressed out. They were working so hard, and the budget exploded. So now we went to the 5 zip codes. We started out with the boundaries of the 5 Catholic parishes: Christ the King, Joan of Arc, Immaculate Heart, St. Thomas, Aquinas, and St. Luke's, with the boundaries of those parishes. And then when COVID came, we took the whole city. It was a drive up, and we were serving hundreds. And so then when we came back inside, we still did that until we realized we couldn't keep up. And so you couldn't do, serving those kind of people, you can't do a good job. You're just moving them through, and that's not. We want to be part of the neighborhood, so that's just wasn't right. So we went back to the zip codes. Now we're not in the parish boundaries, but we're in the zip code boundaries of the 5 Catholic parishes. If they're out of the boundaries, we can serve them one time. We are not going to turn them away.
The original mission was to be able to provide food for 3 days to a family on an emergency basis. And I think that's still kind of the basic thing. People who are in need, whatever their need, whyever, we're not judgmental. We don't ask them why they're needing food. But I don't think they would be here if they didn't have a need. In the teachings of Christ, help others in need. And if that isn't spiritual, nothing is.